Hey YouTube, I'm Babblerab, and this is my updated build of my Deletor deck. Since the last tournament I had played with it, which was like a few weeks ago, I have made huge amounts of changes to the deck over the course of the week. So I had taken it to locals last weekend, and I managed to go 2-2. So matchups were against Token Rambo. I had no idea what the heck, or I had no idea how to play against this deck, and I ended up misplaying a Legion play because I had both of my Legion mates not in my deck at the time. One was in my soul, one was in my damage zone, and yeah, didn't end well, and basically I lost 2-0 against him. Second matchup was against Bermuda Triangles, which was the Riviera Troy Legion. He won game 1, but I managed to beat him games 2 and 3. So yeah, like I said, my locals is currently doing a match system, kind of like how Yu-Gi-Oh does it. So there's 3 games instead of a single game, so yeah. Third match was against Pale Moon. Lost the first game again, but somehow managed to win the second and third games. I did not expect to win that match. And last game was against my friend's Aquaforce deck. Same guy I played against with my Bermudas. And game 1, my Deletors could not get rolling, and the game ended very rapidly. Both games did not last more than 5 turns, both of which resulted in me losing. But my deck could not get its main strategy out, and he just beat me down. Game 2, I managed to push him up to 5 damage, and that was literally the last turn that I took that game, because he beat me the next turn. So, yeah, Aquaforce. Very, very aggressive, and I'm not sure what the heck I'm going to do to improve the matchup with this deck against them. So, yeah. Anyway, in general, though, I'm quite pleased with how the deck had performed. It was a big improvement over the losing every single game that happened after I had, or before I had done the first profile of this. So, yeah, very pleased with the changes and the improved performance in that regard. So, without any further ado, let's get on with the deck profile. Okay, so the grade 0s, I have changed up my starter. I'm now playing a single copy of Luchi. What he does is when he's sacked, you pick a card in your opponent's back row and then you lock it, plus you vanish delete 1 card. So this is actually pretty good for stopping Legion-based decks, considering the fact this deck does a lot of vanish deleting. Plus early on he can put pressure on your opponent's back row by locking the cards, which can give the additional disruption that you need to weaken the next attack that's going to be coming towards you. The trigger lineup has changed drastically from before, but still playing 4 heals. Instead of 6 stands, I'm down to 4 stands, because what I realized that, yes, Rainbow build may not be the most ideal for certain decks, but one, if you're getting a crit trigger or a stand trigger, they both essentially do the same thing in this deck. Because anything that's going to either increase the amount of damage that you deal against a deleted Vanguard, or allow you to gain more attacks against a deleted Vanguard, you can take that. It's perfectly fine, regardless of what ends up happening in the game. So, yeah, I've removed 2 crits and 2 stands, so basically I'm just playing the Geeva and Eddie, because they gain effects when the opponent's Vanguard is deleted. Eddie gives you the free draw, Geeva's the unflip and vanish delete, and he goes back into your deck. So he's good in that sense. And something that I didn't think the deck actually needed, but actually does need, is draw triggers. So I'm running 4 copies of I don't know what he's called. I don't really care about the name. But yeah, the draw triggers give you drown targets, plus they give you additional draw power, and they can be used for Greion targets as well. So because they have a low shield value, you don't really care too much about whether or not you pitch them from your hand or not, because they're not going to be doing a whole lot. So he's fantastic to discard with drown, and yeah, he's great for paying costs. So yeah, that's all the grade 0s, moving on to the grade 1s. Okay, so grade 1s, lineup, I don't know how much has changed since the last build, but running 4 copies of Drown. Early on, this guy can help you get to the cards you need, and I just figured that you definitely want to be playing 4 of him. Gunnock is not worth anymore, primarily because he's got low power, so if you end up needing to ride him, you're in a bit of trouble, because it's going to mean that your opponents can hit you easier. And Drown's just better, in my opinion. The discard 1, draw 2 is perfectly fine, plus he builds up soul. And then running 4 Perfect Guards, 4 Ender, mainly because I don't have any other Link Joker Perfect Guards, and whatever. I bought enough Vanguard and Deletor packs that I've made this guy usable because I have a ton of them. So yeah, 4 perfect guards. Yeah, you definitely need 4 perfect guards in a stride format. And then running 3 copies of Guim. He's kind of just a go-to as a first ride when you need to, excuse me, when you need to get to grade 1. And he's a good sack target, plus if you do end up ever using the effect, he's pretty useful in that regard. He does more or less the same thing as Zaele if you can hit with Zaele. I think Gaele, I mean, sorry. But yeah. And then the last 2 is 2 copies of Aieda replacing the Gunnix, because 1, Aieda has a higher power, and 2, he's got a lower cost. And does pretty much the exact same thing anyway. So yeah. Grade 2s. So I think this is pretty much where I've made the largest amount of changes to the deck. I've completely removed Geali, as a matter of fact. So now instead we're running 4 Alba. What he does is, if your opponent has a deleted Vanguard, and you call him to rearguard, you call a copy of Elro from your deck, and then your opponent has to call the top card from their deck to a rearguard circle. Now, in addition, if he is in the, I believe, right column, and you have a Elro in the left column, he will gain 3,000 attack, which basically, this is a 1-card pressure play for the most part. So if I go Greion, delete your Vanguard, and I happen to have one of him in my hand, it's now Alba, Elro. So you've got 12k attack, 11k attack, plus Greion, and then this is without any boosts. So it's much more powerful than the jail play, and you have to invest a lot less hand advantage in order to get it off. The combo piece of this is Elro. I'm only playing 3 because you don't really want to draw into him as much as you want to just superior call him off of Alba. But what Elro does is once per turn, and I believe that means that you can only use 1 Elro effect per turn. Means that you can't, if you have multiple copies, you don't get the effect more than once. When your opponent superior calls a unit, this doesn't mean that, or this doesn't have to be when your opponent has a deleted Vanguard or not, or at all. I can talk. You countercharge 1, and then vanish delete 1 from your opponent's grave. And then if you have the Alba in the right column and your opponent has a deleted Vanguard, he gains the 3k. So this pretty much completely removes the need to run Jail now that I've actually been playing it, because 1, Jail does have to hit, and I thought that that was important because he would bait out guards all the time. But what I also was realizing is that the opponent just guarded the Jail all the time. You were sitting with damage that was face down. This is a guaranteed unflip for the most part, as long as you can get to him and you have him in deck. So, in my opinion, now, after testing it, this is a much better engine than running Jail. Additional grade 2s are 3 Gaele. I would not change this card at all. He snipes opponent's front row. I think it's front row. It might just be in general. No, it is. I'm pretty sure it's front row. Yeah. So he snipes off cards in your opponent's front row that are particularly annoying, which is very useful. Plus, he can trigger off your starter's effect if you need to ride him. And he also is an 11k attacker if you don't end up getting to Alba or Elro. Or if you end up losing like an Alba or an Elro, you can say, okay, I don't care. I'm just going to play Gaele this turn and just snipe off a front row, vanish delete something, and then have an 11k attacker. So he's good because, like I said, he retires front row cards, and they don't even get them in the grave if they have nothing in grave because it just immediately gets vanish deleted afterwards. And then the last 2 grade 2s I'm running are 2 copies of Gaele. In the previous build I was running 4 of him, but then you don't really need him as much as you would like to see Alba or Gaele. So you just run less copies of him, and it was mainly because I don't have the room to run any more copies of Gaele, and it's not really too big of an issue. Gale's good when I see him, but for the most part, you do want him primarily in your deck for the Legion play. And moving on to grade 3s. Okay, so for the grade 3s, we're running 4 Greion, which is now, in my opinion, probably the best deleter grade 3 that there is right now. What he does, excuse me, what he does is you counterblast 2, sack a deleter, and then you delete your opponent's Vanguard. Now, what's nice about this is it's very cheap, so it's very easy to get the counterblast back through all the unflipping that the deck has. And that's primarily what makes him very useful, is that the fact that his cost is very cheap, so you can use it a lot. Which is primarily how this deck is supposed to run, is if you can just get to a Greion and just keep using Greion's effect, and just keep deleting their Vanguard every turn, that's pretty much how this deck is designed to play, and how it's designed to win. And then I've completely nearly removed Oksizz. Completely nearly. That's good English. But yeah, I've pretty much removed Oksizz entirely from the deck. I'm playing 3 copies of Zaele. What he is useful for is, because he's Legion, you can recycle triggers that you've got to, or that you've gotten to earlier on in the game, which can help restack like heal triggers or crit triggers or stand triggers, or if you need to like pull cards back that you need for later use, hopefully if you can draw into them. He's good in that sense as well. Plus, the one turn that he does delete, he swings for a very large number. And then if you're able to get another Greion or an Oksizz in hand, you pretty much don't need to worry about having to be stuck where you can't delete the Vanguard. So, most of the time when I did have him in my hand, I had another grade 3, so I was good to go after I made the Legion play. And depending on whether or not you're able to make a really big push and potentially end the game that turn, you won't even need to ride to your other grade 3. But he's there so you can recycle resources, and also because I find Oksizz effect to be a bit too expensive now. And then, but I still am running a single copy of Oksizz. I've already explained what this guy does, but he's good if you can draw into him as like your first grade 3, because if your opponent's at grade 2 and you go Oksizz, they now have to discard to ride to grade 3, which means that they're losing advantage. Plus, the turn that you do delete, he swings for a really, really big number because he does gain the 10k. Now, my reasoning for running 1 Oksizz, 4 Greion, and 3 Zaele is because I don't really want to run 4 copies of Zaele in the deck, because I'm worried about getting stuck under a scenario where I have Legioned and then I don't have anything else to ride in order to delete. So I'd rather have 5 possible grade 3s that I can use the effects over and over again, rather than having 4, is what I'm getting at here. Basically, if I've rode Zaele and then I don't have another copy of like Oksizz or Greion in hand, the deck pretty much stalls because you can't delete, and the whole deck is reliant on you deleting. So that's why I took running a 1 of in Oksizz over running 4 Zaels. So yeah. Also, I'm just going to quickly put these cards aside and just move on to the Strad deck, even though it's like pretty much irrelevant. 2 Judgment of Side, 2 Maximum Seal Dragon, nothing's changed. Once I get the Deletor Stride, I'm probably going to put him in, but I have actually built a second Deletor deck that's more centered around the Strides. So once I get that complete, I'll be showcasing that, and you'll probably be seeing these Strides moving over to the other deck. So yeah. Leave your thoughts and any questions that you guys have in the comment section below. And overall, yeah, I'm Babblerab, and I'm going to talk to you guys later.